welcome everybody. Acronym anxiety. We're here to talk about acronyms and shortening words and maybe some reasons why you shouldn't always do that. Chris, do you want to tell them a little bit about Media Current?
Yeah, sure. Media Current was founded in 2007, and we specialize in Drupal. We have headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. We have over 75 Drupal experts on staff. We have over 70,000 hours in Drupal 8 alone. We are one of the top 5 contributors on Drupal.org. Some of our clients include big enterprises and global brands. And we're leader in the decoupled and progressively decoupled architecture. We are a fully distributed company, aside from 12 people in Atlanta, Georgia, where we're headquartered.
Wait a minute, you're not Kelly.
I mean, a little bit. I mean,
you got some hair tucked under the hat.
Is it the hat? Is it the hat that gave it away?
So, I'm Jeff. Been with Media Current for 8.5 years now, and Kelly, who is going to be with me, and actually who created most of this presentation, is somewhere along that flight path right now. This is her second flight of the day she's been doing to try to get here. There's, as you know, not good weather. There's also not good airplanes in Columbus, Ohio, apparently. So Chris is going to pinch hit here for us as well. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about acronyms and maybe some of the origins and where they came from and how they came to be among us. Going to spend some time trying to give some definitions of a lot of common acronyms in the major areas, especially as it relates to Drupal and open source and the web. We also want to cover acronyms that are maybe commonly used or misused and see if we can't correct some of those usages here today. And others that maybe have multiple meanings. One illustration of where it's maybe not good to use an acronym because it might not mean what you think it means. Also cover some things that are mistaken for acronyms but are really not, and cover some best practices for how to actually apply them or not in your day-to-day.
All right.
And
it's my face about now.
that was the face that Chris gave me when I told him he would be jumping in and helping out.
Yeah, he was all like, we got to get this done by COB ASAP so we maximize our ROI. And I just, what?
He looked like that. So for any linguists out there, just in case, we're actually talking about multiple things here, but we're going to commonly just refer to all this as acronyms. So acronyms come in a few different forms. So there's acronyms, which are the things that we pronounce as words that aren't really words, but a smash up of things. And we can debate whether it's GIF or GIF if y'all want. Okay. See, that's what I thought. But now that I know you took that one, I might go opposite. I don't know. Also, initialism. That's where you use the 3 initials and pronounce the initials, like WWW, which is funny because you think like, okay, I'm doing the letters to shorten it up, but that's actually longer than just saying World Wide Web, which is kind of funny. And also abbreviations, so DevOps and sysadmin and that sort of thing. So for the purposes of this talk, we'll just commonly refer to all of this as acronyms. So a little bit of the origins. Shortening up things in language dates back to ancient time for sure, but a lot of the stuff we'll be talking about and what we think of as acronyms today originated around 1879 with a gentleman by the name of Walter Phillips, who worked at the Associated Press at the time as a telegrapher. And as you can imagine, when this was your technology and you had to transmit data across it, shortening those things up to send that information really helped. And it's funny because this code that he developed and became kind of the standard on through the 20s, a lot of it lives on. So you might be familiar with POTUS or SCOTUS. That came from this. It was introduced then. Instead of saying President of the United States, it was shortened to that. If you work in the command line and do things like MV to move files, well, that's on this chart, not on that one because I didn't get the full thing, but so taking verbs and taking all the vowels out and kind of smooshing it together and those sorts of things. So it lives on.
See, now I thought it all happened on the iPhone. So.
Well, then there's this, which is kind of like the modern telegraph, especially when placed into the hands of a teen like I have. If you came here for explanations of some of those BRB, LOL, ILYSM kind of stuff, I'm not the one to do that for you. I'll send my daughter tomorrow. She can translate stuff for you. Oh, I clicked the wrong thing.
Well, that's fantastic.
So we want to talk about somewhere in between those two things. Business and development acronyms. 3 things that we maybe want to get out of today. Maybe we can clear up at least one acronym you weren't familiar with or maybe haven't been using quite the right way. Maybe give some better reasons for when to use or not use acronyms and remind everybody that you're not a telegraph. You're not limited by that technology, so you can actually use the words and it might be clearer. And finally, most importantly, let's see if we can stump Chris.
Oh, that's going to be easy. Let's try this.
So Chris is going to start off with a few marketing and strategy acronyms.
All right, let's play a game of have you guys heard this before? Let's try SEM, search engine marketing. Does anybody know what that is? Sweet. Well, for those who didn't raise your hand, search engine marketing aims to get organizations listed highly in search rankings and drive users to their website. It encompasses both organic search and paid marketing to attract users.
He's totally using Kelly's notes here.
No, there's nothing. The screen's blank, guys.
Aha!
It's the same as SEO.
No, it's not.
Not the same. Sorry. SEO is search engine optimization. Is part of SEM, but it focuses on driving users through organic search, leaning on page titles, meta descriptions, keyword-rich content to increase search rankings and entice users. I'm learning while we're doing this. This is great.
All right, so she was nervous and she typed a lot of words here for you. Let's see if you can do the next one with that.
Okay, well, let's try this here. Search engine results page, SERP. Well, I mean, we got PPC, pay per click. That's self-explanatory. Google Tag Manager. Now, I know this one from testing this bad boy. So we all know that one. Okay.
Tell me more about that one.
Well, here, let me just scroll this blank screen right here, and just make sure that the mouse wheel's still working pretty good. Google Tag Manager is a tool that makes it simple to track all of your tags, right, in one place. GTM or Google Tag Manager can be used for tracking analytics, pay-per-click campaigns, and remarking, etc., etc. So we have, it beat me to it. Google Analytics, GA, Google Analytics. Now there's one on here, I cheated a little bit. There's one on here that I'm hoping we clear up today as part of our goals. So, all right, Google Analytics puts power, you beat me to it. So, oh, you know, see, LSU fans, I swear. Google Analytics puts the power into the hands of the site managers by allowing them to track user behavior, conversations, etc. Let's see. Call to action, CTA. We all know this one pretty well, right? Self-explanatory. But let's see. User experience, UX. I love user experience, all right? I mean, it's a self-explanatory title, but it really, really impacts the site. That is a very important one that you're going to see a lot in this industry because it can make or break a site. I'll tell you that much.
Later on, we'll cover one that's maybe mixed up with it.
This is the one I like. KPI. This is, if anything, I want this one to be clarified today. Key performance indicators. This is essentially how you're going to track the goal, not a goal itself. So
That's right.
we're going to clear that up here. Business acronyms. Okay.
I'm going to jump in.
You gonna? All right.
So the first two kind of go hand in hand in terms of business acronyms. B2B and B2C. These two are a great example of why are you using these. Maybe just talk about how businesses that their primary focus is creating products and services to be used by other businesses versus B2C is business that create products or services sold direct to consumers. Again, especially when you're mixing goals of what the business has with what you're trying to relay to the development team and the QA team and others, and you start mixing these phrases together and throwing B2B in, with development requirements. It's maybe better to just spell it out or speak clearly about what's in there. RFP, everybody's favorite. So this is a request for proposal. This is identifying the needs and kind of detailing out the project or initiative that you have, and hopefully what its goals are, what you're trying to achieve with it, and putting that out there for vendors, agencies, people to submit bids on, to take that information, convert that into an estimate of what it would take to fulfill that, and then respond. The fun secret about RFPs, though they're, I guess, a necessity for a lot of companies, the end result and end product of what gets created from a project rarely resembles what is actually written in that original RFP, because it's through the actual discovery work together with the partner that wins the business that you identify what you actually needed, and it gets defined a little bit further. FY, business term for fiscal year, which is different than a calendar year, because this has to do with accounting and financials, and the 12-month cycle that particular organization might track their finances over, typically using quarters, 3 months at a time. For example, the fiscal year for a university is probably going to end around June, and a new one will start in July, rather than a calendar year, obviously, the December, January cycle.
Uh-oh. While Jeff is fixing this, one thing that he mentioned that is really important is the context when you're using acronyms, and the conversation that you're having when you're using them. So always make sure that it fits, right? You don't want to be talking about business acronyms when you're in maybe a project management setting, or like you said, developer setting, because then people are going to just be like, okay, they'll start making their own interpretation of what it means, and it could lead to miscommunications quite a bit. I think we're all guilty of sitting there being like, okay, what does SMH mean? What is this? Uh-oh. Did we lose internet?
I could get up there and tell jokes while we wait.
Go for it, Bill. Let's pause there from the first two while I'm reloading this, and let's see if we can stump Chris or I. Other acronyms from marketing, strategy, business that you've maybe heard and you wonder what they are. Let's wait, shall we? Come on. Throw another one out there. Bill's, what's one you've heard? What's a businessy one?
It's not a stump the tail question, but just a request for everybody here. My role, I work with Jeff and Chris at Media Current. My role is business analyst. There's Rob. Hey. As a business analyst, I deal with a good 20 or 30 acronyms, but I ask everybody here to memorize just one. That acronym is DFD. That stands for Data Flow Diagram. And the reason why I ask you remember that one is that is the beginning of business analysis, and it drives everything else. DFD stands for Data Flow Diagram. Its purpose is to make clear the boundaries of a project, the scope of a project, what is included, what is not. Once that is determined, it drives everything else quite naturally and easily. So do remember that one acronym.
And that one again was?
DFD.
DFD. Love it. All right, we are back, hopefully. We lost Kelly's notes, so adventures for you, my friend. The next one up here, ROI. Again, we'll cover this a little bit more in the overused slide, but this is, I'm investing money in something, what am I getting out of it? Maybe a better term rather than talking about ROI all the time is to say value, or what valuable things are we creating? CRM, customer relationship management. So this is the system to capture all of the activity during the FY to show the ROI to that B2B client. Okay, I'll stop. ROI. So CRM's Salesforce being an example of this. So the system that consolidates, the activity and information that helps with your management of the customer or client. And CMS, we all know that. We're here at Drupal Camp, the content management system. Although Drupal is sometimes described as a CMF, content management framework. Project management acronyms, we can dive into this one together here, Chris. PM stands for project manager.
Project
That's
manager.
pretty, yeah.
One for one.
It can't. So see, again, duplication, so that one probably belongs in something we're going to cover in a bit. CSM, also, there's other CSMs beyond just Certified Scrum Master, which is somebody, with formal training in Agile process and carries that certification. Chris, you want to cover what a CSPO is?
Yeah, apparently it's not from Star Wars. I didn't know this, but I thought it was C-3PO for a minute there. But it's a certified Scrum product owner. So it's a product owner that's certified in Scrum.
Good one. Statement of work, SAL.
What is the CSPO?
So there's a difference between the two. Certified Scrum Master is going to have more within the Agile process. It's going to have training in organizing the activities of the process itself. So we're going to have a Scrum meeting. The Scrum Master runs the Scrum meeting, and they're trained to do that and make it effective and efficient. Product owner is the owner of the product for which the project or initiative where it's being applied is trained to look out for, hey, at the end of the day, I need something that's going to be a useful and viable product, and all my decisions that I'm making in terms of priorities and what needs to come out of this, I'm the owner of that part of it, right? So Scrum Master is more about the process, owner is about the thing that's being produced.
Usually on the client side.
Yeah, sometimes.
So,
Question.
so wait, I'm sorry, you may have already said this. What is Scrum? Is that like a program or?
Okay, good question. So you're familiar with the Agile process versus what? Okay, so it's project management principles. So a traditional one that if you're going to plan out your entire project and exactly how it's going to go, and step 1 is going to happen, and then step 2 is going to happen, and then step 3 that depends on steps 1 and 2 is going to happen right after that, and it's all going to be perfect and fall in this calendar, that's called waterfall. And that doesn't work so well. Because the minute something in step 1 goes off track and the thing 2 months later that was dependent on it, it slips too, and then everything slides. What Agile is about, and we could do a whole session just on Agile, but what Agile is about is more organizing the work into shorter cycles to complete an entire unit of work within that cycle. And those are commonly called sprints. And these are roles. Scrum is one form of Agile that is practiced that's centered around the meetings and the rituals and routines that happen to keep a group collaborating together during that sprint to produce that batch of work within that cycle so that everything keeps moving. So it might be, hey, we're going to build the homepage in this sprint. That's a little ambitious probably, but hey, we'll go with it, right? And all the things that have to happen within that to get that created. So it might need to be designed, and it might need to have a little bit of development to happen. Chris might need to QA test it at the end of it to make sure it's working, right?
And Agile is, it's in the name. It's more agile, right? It tends to let you pivot a little bit more. So that's where the Scrum Master comes into effect in protecting the scope of the project. So because you're able to kind of change on the fly a little bit, it's easy for scope creep.
That's the product owner.
Sorry, product owner. I said Scrum Master. Yeah,
the
sorry.
Scrum Master is the one making sure you're doing all of the activities within that, probably because so much needs to happen within that cycle to get to the finish line. And if our meeting's going off track or we skipped a step and whatever we're supposed to do to stay aligned, the Scrum Master is trained in kind of keeping that moving properly. Do you have a follow-up question on that? No?
So the Scrum product owner is like client, or they?
It typically can be.
So I'm a certified Scrum product owner. I went through the training. So it's different depending on what you're trying to do. But in our group, my job is to make sure that the tasks that are getting done are prioritized properly and pulled into the correct sprint. So I sign off on, yes, these are the things that we need to do for this sprint.
Because,
so then
yeah.
if he's the one in charge of it, then I'm just trying to distinguish.
Yeah, so the purpose for that is, instead of, again, we're going to build this entire thing, and we're going to map out every single step right before we begin any of it, and then we're going to go through all those, right, and do waterfall. Agile is about choosing what's the most impactful and most important things, and let's do those and complete those first, right? So even if we don't get the entire list of stuff that we thought we were going to launch with, we can still get to a viable thing if we focus on, with the product owner, what's going to get us the most impactful, important things in this project that we need to work on, and prioritize the work within the sprints, first on the most important things. And then when those are done, okay, now what's the next most important things? And let's make sure we're making track of those. How'd I do? Yeah?
That was great, yeah. I know it's not part of this topic, but if you want to know more, I can talk to you later about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think in the intro slide, we had some fun and put acronyms instead of spelling things out in our stuff. And I think Kelly has one or both of these, so she would be the one that could have given you all the official definitions there too. But there we go. Again, back to some of these statement of work. So this is sometimes known as contract. This describes if we're working on a project for somebody, we're going to have a statement of work of, defining what that project is and what's going to be delivered, so that even if we're working within Agile, there's some semblance of what we're being held accountable to delivering.
It also helps, like on the QA side, what do we cover, what are we responsible for, and it helps not only safeguard the client, but safeguard the company.
It's interchangeable, well, at least within the university system I was in, where sometimes the SOW would also be scope of work to define.
We're going to touch on that in a little bit.
That's getting it wrong.
Yeah, well, it is. So that's coming up on our one where it's one thing is referencing two different things, and that's a good one. You nailed it there. Smart goals. So this is a acronym for a goal that is made to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. So if you're going to set a goal for something you're working on in a project, in life, whatever, you make a SMART goal, you'll do better because you are making sure it's something that's actually attainable and realistic and has a timing on it versus just some hope or dream that you have, which is not really a SMART goal. You love to talk about this one.
I love MVP, minimum viable product. I usually refer to it as MLP, minimum lovable product. So the minimum viable product, of course, as we probably all know, is essentially the minimum product that the client needs to have working. Like, this is the function we absolutely need to go to launch and whatnot. It's not with all the bells and the whistles attached to it. It's what's the minimum product that we can take to launch. So it could be a product, it could be a prototype, etc. So work in progress. Yes, that's essentially any site. It's continuous work in progress. Yeah, I mean, it's all self-explanatory names. It's anything that's still in work. So.
That's kind of the point, though.
Yeah.
Why confuse somebody with an acronym that they might not have heard before and say, yeah, it's a WIP, it's a work in progress. Which one makes sense if you didn't know that acronym, right?
Sometimes I slow down on oh my gosh.
So, I heard SMART goals, and the achievable part, the A in there helps you not be Homer, right? So.
That's not me. He's not referencing me there.
All right, Chris, we're going to try out some development acronyms on you.
All right, let's do it.
For the devs. So everybody probably knows this, but
yeah. I would hope everybody here knows that one. JavaScript, JS, JavaScript.
All right, so GIF? Is it GIF or GIF, and what is a GIF?
All right, hands for GIF. Okay.
See, I was going to raise my hand, but you did that one, so I'm going to do
GIF. No hands for GIF. Everybody raise
you
raise
didn't
their hand
ask for the other one. So
hands for GIF. Hands for GIF.
Your hand's up.
Oh, it was a demonstration.
Okay.
All right.
So
Ooh.
TFA or 2FA, two different abbreviations you might. So what is this?
Two-factor authentication. Essentially, we run this on a lot of our stuff, right? So you go to log in, you put your password in, and then you have to get a code from an authenticator to type in. It changes every 60 seconds. It's a unique code. It destroys itself after that 60 seconds. A new one is born, and you have to put the right code in order to access it.
Sometimes it's one of these that
Yep.
gives you a little number. So this is to log into our bank account.
Let's see. Sometimes it is when it boots up one of these. So
Quick, everybody. write
hey,
this
hey,
down.
don't hack my email, guys. Come on now. API, application program interface. I'm pretty sure we're all
good on
familiar with
API?
API is. Okay, lamp. These are used to light rooms up, usually in the dark. No.
Wise guy. So this is the common stack. Obviously, you're here at Drupal Camp that it doesn't have to run on this, but it's the most common stack that Drupal, WordPress, those sites. So L for the operating system, Linux, some flavor of that, Apache running on the servers, MySQL for the database, and PHP is the code that's executing to make your Drupal site go.
Oh, I know this one. Quality assurance.
You better know this one.
These are the guys that make you guys look good. I always say when I'm introducing QA is that is our primary job is to make you look good. We test your stuff so that when you are presenting to a client and you want to pull it up, they say, hey, how's it look in IE11? You know that it's going to look good, that somebody else has looked at this code and that it is ready for launch or ready for at least demo to a client, because nothing's worse than going through your stuff and it breaks right in front of a client.
So a lot of times people will say QA, UAT and do them together. Tell me the difference.
Okay, so UAT is user acceptance testing. Usually, at least in the workflow that I like, it comes after QA pass, and it's usually when the QA has looked at the ticket, they pass it, they send it on to the client for user acceptance testing, meaning the client's going to look at it and say, yeah, that's what we agreed on. So they can either find something. Sometimes they have such in-depth knowledge. If it's a pre-existing site that you're working on, they know all the ins and outs on it. They've worked for it for years and years and years, and they can find something that sometimes maybe QA wasn't aware of or whatnot. But it's just a second layer of testing on the client side, and they sign off, yep, that's done, and then we go from there.
And tell me if this sounds right to you, Mr. First. So going back to the CSPO, the product owner in the Agile, is it common that the person that's maybe providing the UAT might be the product owner, or they might delegate somebody from their group to?
Usually I'm representing the business owners, but I want the actual business owners to.
So you might take it to them to do UAT. So you're not doing QA. You've had something delivered to you that you trust it works, right? But does it work for them is what UAT is about.
All the time you hear things like, I know that's what we said, but that's not what we
And that's yep. WYSIWYG.
It's fun to say.
It's fun. Actually, we're here at Drupal Camp Atlanta. I think this is the 10th Drupal Camp Atlanta. One of the early. This is like the 5th of these that I've actually spoken at, which is amazing to me that we've had that many. Somewhere way back in the past, I did a shootout of WYSIWYG editors, and that was not the best presentation, but it was fun. And it's interesting because the one that came in second back then, because this was a while back, was CK Editor, an acronym describing the thing. But CK Editor has dedicated, following and hardworking people that support that project, and it's evolved and it really stands out. I can't even remember the one that it lost to because it hasn't had the same lasting power. So, we have front-end developers, and they come to me all the time talking about things like tools they use like Grunt and Gulp. I think they're just making it up, though.
I actually do those when I gulp. I grunt when I gulp too hard.
That's true. That's why you're not a front-end dev.
It's true.
All right. The Grunt and Gulp. So I'm not the one to explain what they are, but it's tools that the front-end developers use to, I can't even begin. What's that?
It's task runners, basically.
Yeah.
Consiles, stats, ECS.
There you go. I just, why did like it was, I think Grunt was first, and then they started talking about Gulp. It's like, what's the next one going to be? Grosser?
Here's vomit.
Yes. Please,
Kinda goes online.
user acceptance test is my thing that I produce with vomit. Yeah. Misused and overused acronyms. So let's talk about a few of these. So you touched on KPI earlier. KPI is not a goal. A key performance indicator is tracking your performance progress towards success against that goal, right? So if you have a goal that involves the number of getting something to 100 by the end of the year, your key performance indicator is maybe whether you're at 50 by the middle of the year, right? And how you're pacing along the way and how you're monitoring things. SAS versus SAS. There should actually be three. So SAS, the first one, and I don't have the notes, and Kelly has the actual explanation of what SAS stands for from the front end team. Yeah, semantically awesome style sheets or something like that. Yeah. Cool. Got it. Tell her that I got it right. So again, back to our front enders, right? So that is, related to the CSS, and which is very different than SaaS, software as a service, which is a lot of the online things that you now do to perform stuff that you used to have to go buy, programs for applications. There's the third one that is SaaS that my daughter gives me daily, but that's neither one of those.
Whenever Florida beats LSU.
Yeah, no, that's the one you give me, and I think we've lost it again because, there we go. Okay, so we talked about UX earlier, UX and UI, and you'll hear this used interchangeably. They're two very different things. So user experience, UX, is just like it says, the experience that you have when you're interacting with something. How it makes you feel, whether you like it, whether you don't, whether it's easy, whether it's hard.
Flow of the website.
Mm-hmm. The user interface is the actual thing that you're using, right? So you need to have a user interface that is good to have a good user experience. But it's two very different things, and they kind of get misused or confused with one another often. And we'll see if we can. I did. I think we covered that, but so search engine marketing is the more holistic, like marketing, using search engines. Oh my gosh, I'm just all over the place here. This is just not
It's a
so.
little lagging. It's going to catch up in a minute.
Here, see if you can fix
Yeah,
me
I
up
got
while I'm. So search engine marketing is going to be. All of the things encompassing, including pay-per-click and the other things you might do within the tool set, the paid advertising. SEO is focused on optimizing your performance in the organic search results within Google and the other search engines. And thank you, I skipped that one, good call. Overused. So these are going to be ones that if you have a boss, they probably use and you don't like it. So ASAP, that's overused and and be better because why don't we talk about what your actual need is? I need that ASAP. Well, ASAP to me might be different to you, and you're probably saying I needed it yesterday, and that's not helpful to anybody, right? How about, can you get this to me not by EOD or COB, because those are also relative. Again, we're a distributed team. We have people in 27 states across lots of different time zones. We work with clients overseas sometimes. Who's end of day? Who's close of business, right? Let's be a little more specific about the time that you need something, and that's more helpful to everybody.
Not only that, but when you say, I need this ASAP or something like that, it can come off in text a little harsh.
Yeah.
A little harsher.
Sometimes shortening your language is also being short, and that's not always a good thing, right? So take a minute to say, I really need this by 3 o'clock because I have to take it over here to go do this by 5. It's a few more words, a little more helpful. MVP, as Chris described earlier, the minimum viable product, but again, it gets overused to just within the course, especially in an agile project, of constantly trying to trim scope and limit things down, and let's have direct conversation about what that is, rather than just always use MVP as like the threat, of what we're doing.
Because sometimes the interpretation of that can change, just from people listening in on meetings. If somebody there's misinformation given, it could lead to somebody working on something and wasted hours that really didn't need to be built.
And that's why he likes to use MLP, because it's not really about trimming it to the bare minimum, it's making it to the minimum lovable product, that we like the most. Again, ROI, let's talk about value. Let's not just throw acronyms out there and try to sound all businessy, and multiple meanings. I think we're getting to the one a few that we talked about there. So SOW, and Kelly laughed at me because I was like, and that's also pronounced sow by some people, and that's like a cow, right? She's like, no, it's pig. It's like, either way, it's livestock, and we're in software development. So can mean statement of work or scope of work. Now, how I differentiate these, and I might not be right, but again, that's why let's be more specific about what it is rather than just using the acronym and getting it totally wrong. Statement of work is going to be more about that actual contract or document that we're working against. Scope of work is just generally the description of what the scope of work is. It may or may not be an actual contract, right? Or it might be a project internal in an organization where you're not writing contracts with the team that's working on it. You're just covering a scope of work, as part of the company. Question?
Yeah, related to scope of work, is there a difference between that and like a WBS, a work breakdown structure?
Yes, and my friend Bill back there is going to be a good one. So that's going to be more. So a statement of work might say we're going to achieve these X things at the end of the project, and it might be a little higher level. A work breakdown structure is where you're going to be more technical and describe, okay, and by these things we mean we're going to break this work into these chunks, we're going to approach it this way, we're going to do these things, and they will kind of mix and match within them a little bit, because there'll be crossover on that breakdown that you have to get into a statement of work depending on how detailed it's required to be. Well, they might be. Sometimes the statement of work is incredibly detailed, right? But I would generally define work breakdown structure as something that's going to be a lot more technical type thing that is a lot more detailed. CSM, we talked about this one, right? Could be the Certified Scrum Master. Could be a job title that you'll find in a lot of places, a Client or Customer Success Manager. So again, and a lot of people you see in their email signatures or whatever, CSM. Well, that's a nice acronym. Thanks for sharing that. But what are you really? Because you could be one of or both of those. I wonder if and we've had this, we don't have this title in our organization anymore, but we've had customer success managers who had Scrum certification. So what would they be? A CSM?
CSM
Put it squared. SA could be a couple of things. A system administrator or a sysadmin, if we want to acronym it out or abbreviate it out. Or it could be a security alert, security advisory. There's probably many things that SA could be. Again, are you really gaining anything by just saying SA? Maybe let's be a little more specific. MVP, we've talked a lot about that one, but if you're in the sports ball world, most valuable players, another use of that. That's right.
No, that's never happened before. One thing, just relating to the last slide, if you're going to use acronyms, one tip that I do, because I use one called P1 a lot, it's Priority 1 Flows. Every time you're going to be using that acronym a lot, always define it first. So you say, hey, I'm going to be looking at the P1, the Priority 1 Flows, and if somebody says, hey, what's the Priority 1, then you can explain what it means, but at least they know from now on when you're talking P1, they know what the acronym means. So if you're using like SOW, you say the statement of work, SOW, parentheses, statement of work or something like that. So they know exactly which one you're using.
So sometimes we assume something is an acronym and it stands for something. Like these are letters that have, been combined, and what if we spell it out, what is it? But Scrum is one we've talked about here. That's not letters representing something else. That's just the name of the thing in Agile, and it comes from rugby, where everybody would huddle together in the scrum. And I don't know a lot about rugby, so but they would. Oh, come on. JIRA. Now, when JIRA was first represented in its logo and everything, it was all capitals. Everybody, and for those of you who don't know, JIRA is a ticketing system within a suite of projects that's pretty widely used. But JIRA is actually not an acronym. It just, because it was spelled in all caps like in the logo, people assume that it stood for something. It actually is a shortened version, and it stems from, and Kelly had this, and so forgive me if I get this wrong, but I believe it's for Gojira, which is, yeah, the word for Godzilla, and which was a take on Bugzilla, which was a competing product way back in the day. Do you remember Bugzilla, Furf? Yes. The fun thing about Bugzilla, which was an old ticketing system, and I ran into this all the time, I would go to type in the URL to go to our Bugzilla instance, but I would go to bugzilla.com, which was some website that some guy had about the restoration of a VW Beetle, and he was calling it Bugzilla. So I often wonder how much traffic he got just from me, you know. It's like, wow, I do really well in Atlanta. I don't know why they care about my car so much. Yeah. DevOps, so that's just squishing things together, you know, as sort of a title and putting the capital letter and stuff in there. Fun fact, media current is something that gets kind of squished together or pulled apart wrong. It's one word, no capital C. Just help us out there, because we see it 2 words all the time in contracts and stuff. And Git, that looks like it should be an acronym. It's just a really short word. So coming back to some best practices along the lines of what you were mentioning. So pay attention, you know, in the use, and as we've been illustrating here, you know, pay attention to the context and make sure of your audience. So let's not use a bunch of the business acronyms in front of a room full of developers who might not know all of those, and let's not assume that they do. Let's not use acronyms that have the double meanings unless we're really specifically in the group that knows the meaning we're applying. To Chris's point, if you're writing a contract, and that's a place where acronyms do come into play, because you have to repeat the thing 50,000 times throughout. So the first time you do it, you do what's called like a definition or a statement of it. So you do the word, the full word, and then in parentheses with quotes, you put what it is that you're going to abbreviate it as after that. So, you know, if you're going to use an acronym that way. So you've defined it first, kind of like your P1 flows, and you can do this, and then after that, okay, now I've defined it for you within the context, now you know what I mean, so I can shorten it now if I have to, because I want to behave like a telegraph. Confirm before you use one and send it, right? A little Googling goes a long way. You know, remember back to the one I had about the mom saying WTF, right? And, you know, acronyms as words, again, better off to just be specific about what you're doing. You know, even in a world of we're doing slides and, you know, we're on Twitter, whatever it may be, we're going to use a shortened thing, but you might not get the result you're after if you overly shorten things and use them.
Just touching on something you were actually just saying there, with your audience, make sure, you know, the product owners or clients that you're talking to, these are your business partners that you're working with. So if you go in there and you're like, oh, I'm going to sound smart, I'm going to say I'm going to do this, you use just a bunch of acronyms, all it's going to do is frustrate them and say, can you explain that to me? And it kind of feels like they're talking down to them and whatnot, and all it's going to do is lead to frustration. It's not going to make you look a lot smarter. It's just going to kind of build a little bit of tension between you.
So we'll post these slides that I've done a terrible job scrolling through here today up on the session on the site, because Kelly went and found a whole bunch of great resources to share with everybody if you want to learn more about any of the groups that we came and kind of where we got some of these definitions from. Questions? Maybe some other acronyms you've heard that you don't know what they are. SSO, yes. Single sign-on. Means make the scope of my project a little bit bigger because yeah, or a lot.
Like a cherry bomb down a
But
toilet.
yeah, so that means I'm going to have two different systems, and I have to authenticate into either one, but I want to use the same thing for both, right? So across the suite of Google products, I have my one Google login, and that's a single sign-on across them. At universities, a lot there's the 15,000 different systems, but they want to smash it all together through some SSO application, and Schropp loves implementing those. Other questions?
Obvious one,
POC, proof of concept. Or piece of, no, okay. Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to turn my WIP into a POC, right? My work in progress into a proof of concept. So proof of concept is not the whole thing that's production ready and going to be launched, but I'm going to prove that I can actually achieve this and get it just far enough to prove that, yeah, this is the right path forward. So before we invest way too much into it. Mm-hmm. That was a good one. Oh boy. Okay. Well, then get out. This is acronym.
You want abbreviation? That's down the hall.
I-18N. Oh, yes. And the second one, I bet I know what you're going to say.
Go ahead and tell.
A-L-L-Y? Okay. A11Y. Yes. So there's a form of, and I guess it's just a concatenation or abbreviation. And does anybody, so I-18N stands for internationalization. A11Y stands for accessibility. Does anybody know what the 18 and 11 stand for in that? Well, but why is it 18? Exactly. You do the full count of the letters and you smash it between the first letter and the last letter. So accessibility, I think, is 11, A11Y. Yeah, so go home and impress your families with that. Just start doing all your words with like the count and the number.
My next party, I'm going to whip that one out. By the way,
this guy fun at parties.
Yes,
PEBCAC
I know that one.
Problem exists between keyboard and chair. Yeah, which means it's the person typing on the computer. That's where the problem is. What's that?
Problem in chair, not in computer.
Yes, I like that. I haven't heard
That's
that
a good
one.
one too.
I like that one.
ID10T.
ID10T, yes. You have to write that one out to get it.
Yeah, okay, I got that one. Yeah. I would be remiss to not advertise. We have several open positions at Media Current. If you're interested in talking more about us, we've got a booth out there. Come by, chat. We've got lots of folks here, so love to talk more about that with you. And I think that wraps us up. I think we're about at time.
Yeah.
Thank y'all.